Part 1. A rivalry. Rekindled. It all started on a typical late-night talk show, the kind where laughter usually fills the air and no one takes anything too seriously. But this time, something was different. Jimmy Kimmel, the sharp-tongued host, with a knack for making fun of celebrities, decided to take a jab at Sylvester Stallone. Now, Stallone isn't just any celebrity. He's a living legend. The man behind Rocky, Rambo, and countless other action-packed classics has spent decades building his reputation as a tough guy who never backs down. That night, Kimmel cracked jokes about Stallone's movies, teasing him for being an aging action hero and poking fun at some of his iconic scenes. At first it seemed harmless, just another round of playful banter. But there was something in Stallone's expression that told a different story. He didn't laugh. Instead, he sat there quietly, his jaw clenched, eyes fixed on Kimmel like he was sizing him up. It wasn't hard to tell that those jokes hit a nerve. The thing about Stallone is that he's always been more than just an actor. For years he poured his heart into characters who fought against impossible odds, characters who stood for grit, determination, and resilience. So when someone mocks what he's worked so hard to create, it feels personal. And Kimmel? Well, he didn't stop there. He doubled down, inviting Stallone onto his show under the pretense of patching things up. When Stallone finally appeared on the show, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Kimmel tried to play it cool, cracking more jokes about how old-school action stars struggle to keep up with today's CGI-heavy blockbusters. The audience loved it. They clapped, they laughed, they cheered. But Stallone? He barely cracked a smile. You could see it in his body language. He wasn't amused. Not even a little bit. As the interview went on, Kimmel kept pushing buttons, making sarcastic remarks about Stallone's career choices and throwing shade at his recent projects. Stallone listened patiently, nodding occasionally, but his silence spoke volumes. By the end of the segment, it was clear that this wasn't going to blow over anytime soon. Something had shifted between them, and viewers couldn't help but wonder if this was the beginning of a real feud, or just another Hollywood drama designed to grab headlines. But here's the thing about Sylvester Stallone. He doesn't back down from a challenge. Whether it's climbing the steps of the Philadelphia Museum of Art or facing off against enemies in the jungle, he's built his entire career on proving doubters wrong. So when Kimmel mocked him, Stallone didn't lash out immediately. No, he bided his time, letting the moment simmer. Little did anyone know, he was already planning his next move. A move that would turn this light-hearted rivalry into something unforgettable. Viewers were hooked. Social media buzzed with reactions, memes, and debates. Was Kimmel crossing a line, or was this all part of the entertainment? Some people thought Stallone should let it go, while others hoped he'd respond, in true Stallone fashion, with boldness and flair. What no one expected, though, was how far Stallone was willing to take this. Because deep down, everyone knows that when you poke a lion, you better be ready for what comes next. Little did Kimmel, or anyone else know, Stallone was about to throw down the gauntlet in a way that only he could. This wasn't just about hurt feelings anymore. It was about pride, respect, and showing the world exactly why Sylvester Stallone remains a force to be reckoned with, even after all these years. The tension between Sylvester Stallone and Jimmy Kimmel didn't fade after that awkward late-night interview. In fact, it grew stronger with each passing day. Stallone wasn't the kind of guy to let things slide, not when it came to his pride or his legacy. For him, this wasn't just about a few jokes, it was about respect. And if Kimmel wanted to play games, Stallone was ready to show him exactly who he was dealing with. A few days later, Stallone took to social media, posting a video that caught everyone off guard. He stood in front of a gym, wearing his signature, sleeveless shirt, looking as intense as ever. His voice was calm but firm as he addressed Kimmel directly. "Jimmy," he began, staring straight into the camera like he was talking to an old rival in the ring, "you think you're funny? Let's settle this like real men." He then laid out his plan, a charity event called The Ultimate Showdown. It would be a series of challenges inspired by his most iconic movies. Everything from boxing matches reminiscent of Rocky to grueling obstacle courses straight out of Rambo. The twist? All proceeds would go to charity, ensuring that the event had a good cause at its heart. But make no mistake, this wasn't just about raising money. This was personal. Stallone made it clear that he wasn't backing down. He challenged Kimmel to step up and prove himself. "You've been running your mouth," Stallone said with a smirk. "Now it's time to back it up." He ended the video with a simple message. Are you in or are you out? Social media exploded. Fans couldn't believe what they were seeing. Some thought it was genius, a chance to see two wildly different personalities clash in a way that blended humor and competition. Others wondered if Kimmel would actually accept the challenge. After all, Kimmel was known for sitting behind a desk, cracking jokes and hosting celebrities, not for physical feats or toughness. Could he really hold his own against someone like Stallone? Kimmel, for his part, didn't shy away. A couple of days later, he responded during one of his shows. He started by poking fun at himself, admitting that he wasn't exactly built for battle. "Let's be honest," he joked. "I'm not exactly Rambo material here. My idea of a workout is walking to the fridge and back." The audience roared with laughter, but Kimmel quickly turned serious. "But you know what?" he continued, leaning forward in his chair. "If Sylvester Stallone wants a showdown, I'm not going to back down." His acceptance came with a playful jab, though. "Sly, I hope you're ready," he said with a grin, "because I've got a secret weapon." That line sent fans into a frenzy. What did he mean by secret weapon? Was he bluffing, or did he actually have something up his sleeve? Speculation ran wild online, with people guessing everything from celebrity trainers to surprise guest appearances. Behind the scenes, both men began preparing for the showdown. Stallone, true to form, threw himself into training with unmatched intensity. Videos surfaced of him working out at a local gym, pushing himself harder than ever before. He ran miles every morning, lifted weights until his arms burned, and even practiced sparring with professional boxers. Every move he made seemed calculated, like he was channeling his inner Rocky Balboa once again. He wasn't just training for a competition, he was preparing for war. Kimmel, on the other hand, faced a much bigger challenge. Unlike Stallone, he wasn't used to physical activity. His daily routine consisted of sitting through meetings, filming his show, and maybe squeezing in a quick snack break. Now he had to transform himself, or at least try to. Cameras followed him as he awkwardly attempted basic exercises, often failing hilariously. One clip showed him struggling to do a single push-up, collapsing onto the mat while his trainer looked on in disbelief. Another showed him attempting to climb stairs while carrying dumbbells, only to trip and nearly fall flat on his face. Despite his struggles, Kimmel refused to give up. He hired a team of experts to help him get in shape, including personal trainers, nutritionists, and even a mental coach to keep him motivated. He also reached out to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson for advice. Their connection to wrestling made it a natural fit, and Johnson agreed to mentor him. Together, they worked on building Kimmel's strength and endurance, though progress was slow. In one particularly memorable moment, Kimmel admitted to Johnson that he was nervous. "I don't want to embarrass myself out there," he confessed. Johnson smiled and replied, "Look, man, you're not going to win, but if you show heart, people will respect you for it." Those words stuck with Kimmel, reminding him that this wasn't just about beating Stallone. It was about proving to himself that he could rise to the occasion. As the weeks went by, anticipation for the ultimate showdown reached a fever pitch. Trailers for the event began airing on TV, teasing the challenges and hyping up the rivalry. Clips of Stallone training like a warrior contrasted sharply with footage of Kimmel stumbling through basic workouts, creating a perfect mix of drama and comedy. Fans couldn't wait to see how it would all unfold. For Stallone, this was more than just a competition. It was a chance to remind the world why he was a legend. For Kimmel, it was an opportunity to step outside his comfort zone and show a side of himself that no one had seen before. Both men knew the stakes were high, but neither was willing to back down. The stage was set, the audience was ready, and the countdown to the showdown had begun. What happened next would go down in history. Not just as a battle of brawn versus wit, but as a story of determination, humility, and unexpected friendship. The day of the ultimate showdown was finally here, and the energy in the air was electric. Thousands of fans had gathered at a massive outdoor arena that had been transformed into a tribute to Sylvester Stallone's legendary film career. Everywhere you looked, there were nods to his iconic movies. Life-sized cutouts of Rocky Balboa punching the air, posters of Rambo wielding his bow, and even a replica of the famous steps from the Philadelphia Museum of Art. It felt like stepping into a real-life action movie set. The crowd buzzed with excitement, cameras flashing as people snapped photos and shared updates on social media. Everyone wanted to be part of this once-in-a-lifetime event. As the sun began to set, the atmosphere grew even more intense. A giant screen above the stage played highlights from Stallone's films, accompanied by a booming soundtrack that made your chest vibrate. Then, the announcer's voice echoed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the ultimate showdown." The crowd erupted into cheers. First up, none other than Sylvester Stallone himself. Stallone walked onto the field wearing his classic gym gear, a sleeveless shirt, sweatpants, and gloves. His muscles glistened under the stadium lights, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had spent decades proving doubters wrong. He raised a fist to the crowd, and they roared back in approval. Even though he was pushing 70, he looked every bit the action hero everyone loved. You could tell he wasn't just here to compete. He was here to dominate. Next came Jimmy Kimmel, and the contrast couldn't have been starker. Dressed in a tracksuit that looked 2 sizes too big and sneakers that squeaked with every step, Kimmel jogged awkwardly toward the center of the arena. His hair was messy, his face flushed, and he looked like a guy who'd rather be anywhere else. But despite his obvious discomfort, he waved to the crowd and flashed a nervous grin. "Don't worry," he joked into the microphone. "I'm not going to cry until after I lose." The first challenge was a boxing match, set up to resemble the climactic fight scenes from Rocky. A makeshift ring stood in the middle of the arena, complete with ropes, turnbuckles, and a spotlight shining down on the fighters. Stallone climbed in confidently, bouncing lightly on his toes like he owned the place. Kimmel, on the other hand, stumbled over the ropes and nearly fell, flat on his face before catching himself. The crowd laughed and cheered, already loving the mismatched showdown. When the bell rang, Stallone immediately went on the offensive. He moved quickly, throwing jabs and hooks with precision. Kimmel tried his best to block them, but it was clear he was out of his depth. Every punch that landed sent him stumbling backward, clutching his arms around his head like a turtle retreating into its shell. Despite the beating, Kimmel refused to give up. Instead, he leaned into the absurdity of the situation, hamming it up for the audience. When Stallone landed a particularly hard punch, Kimmel dramatically pretended to collapse, rolling onto the mat and yelling, "Mommy, I want my blanket!" The crowd howled with laughter, and even Stallone cracked a smile. For all his intensity, he couldn't help but appreciate the humor Kimmel brought to the table. Still, he didn't let up. After a few more minutes of relentless attacks, the referee called the match, declaring Stallone the winner. As Kimmel climbed out of the ring, covered in sweat and red-faced, the audience gave him a standing ovation. Not because he won, but because he didn't quit. Next up was an obstacle course inspired by Rambo, complete with muddy trenches, barbed wire crawls, and towering walls to climb. If the boxing match had been a comedy routine, this was pure chaos. Stallone powered through the course like a machine, scaling walls effortlessly and crawling under barbed wire with ease. Watching him move, you'd think he was still in his prime, reliving the glory days of his action hero past. Kimmel, however, struggled from the very beginning. He slipped and slid in the mud, falling face first more times than anyone could count. At one point, he got stuck trying to crawl under the barbed wire, his legs flailing in the air as he desperately tried to wriggle free. The crowd chanted his name, cheering him on as he finally managed to pull himself forward. By the time he reached the final wall, he was drenched in mud and breathing heavily, looking like he might pass out at any moment. But instead of giving up, Kimmel surprised everyone. With the help of a couple of crew members, he scrambled to the top of the wall, raising his arms triumphantly when he made it over. Sure, he finished dead last, but the crowd loved him for it. They clapped and whistled, shouting words of encouragement as he collapsed onto the ground, completely exhausted. Even Stallone walked over and patted him on the back, nodding in respect. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes about the growing camaraderie between the two men. By now it was clear that this showdown wasn't just about competition. It was about entertainment, resilience, and showing what happens when two very different personalities come together. Stallone was proving why he was a legend, dominating every challenge with strength and skill. Kimmel, meanwhile, was winning hearts with his humor and determination. Together, they were creating something unforgettable. As the night wore on, the stakes grew higher. The final challenge loomed ahead, a tug-of-war over a pit of mud. Both men knew this was their last chance to leave everything on the line. Stallone tightened his grip on the rope, his muscles bulging as he prepared to pull with all his might. Kimmel adjusted his stance, squinting at the rope like it was his greatest enemy yet. The whistle blew, and both sides dug in. Stallone pulled with the power of someone who had trained for weeks, his feet planted firmly in the ground. Kimmel surprisingly held his own, at least for a little while. He leaned back with all his weight, grunting and groaning as he fought to keep the rope steady. The crowd screamed, urging them both on. For a brief moment, it almost seemed like Kimmel might actually stand a chance. But then, Stallone unleashed a surge of strength, yanking the rope so hard that Kimmel flew forward, landing smack in the middle of the mud pit. The audience erupted into applause and laughter, cheering for both competitors. Stallone extended a hand to help Kimmel up, and the two shared a laugh as they stood side by side, covered in dirt and sweat. It was a picture-perfect ending to an epic showdown, one that proved that sometimes the real victory isn't about winning or losing, it's about showing up, giving it your all, and having fun along the way. The final challenge of the ultimate showdown was the most anticipated moment of the night, a tug-of-war over a pit of mud. The setup was simple, yet dramatic. A thick rope stretched across a wide, muddy trench, with both ends tied securely to stakes on either side. If you lost your grip or stumbled backward, you'd land right in the gooey mess below. It was messy, unpredictable, and exactly the kind of spectacle the crowd had been waiting for. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting golden light across the arena, the tension reached its peak. Stallone stood at one end of the rope, his boots firmly planted in the dirt. His expression was intense, focused, and unshakable. He wrapped the rope around his hands, gripping it tightly like he was preparing for battle. On the other side, Kimmel looked nervous, but determined. He adjusted, his stance trying to mimic what little he knew about proper tug-of-war technique. His sneakers squeaked against the ground as he shifted his weight, clearly aware that this might be his last stand. The referee raised a flag, signaling the start of the challenge. The crowd fell silent, holding their breath as they waited for the whistle. When it finally blew, both men leaned back with all their strength, pulling the rope taut. For the first few seconds, nothing seemed to happen. The rope quivered under the strain, neither side gaining an inch. Stallone's muscles flexed visibly, veins popping out on his arms as he pulled with everything he had. Kimmel, meanwhile, gritted his teeth, his face turning bright red as he dug his heels into the ground. At first glance, it seemed like a mismatch. Stallone was built for moments like this. Years of training and discipline gave him an undeniable advantage. But Kimmel wasn't backing down. To everyone's surprise, he held his ground, refusing to budge even an inch. The audience erupted into cheers, shouting encouragement for both competitors. "Come on, Sly," some yelled, while others chanted, "You got this, Jimmy." For a brief moment, it almost felt like Kimmel might actually hold his own. Maybe it was adrenaline, maybe it was sheer willpower, but he managed to resist Stallone's initial surge. Sweat dripped down his forehead, mixing with streaks of mud from earlier challenges. His glasses fogged up, but he didn't bother wiping them off. Instead, he squinted through the blur, focusing on the rope in his hands like it was the only thing keeping him alive. Then, just when it seemed like the stalemate might continue forever, Stallone made his move. With a sudden burst of energy, he yanked the rope with such force that Kimmel staggered forward, losing his balance. The crowd gasped as Kimmel flailed wildly, waving his arms in a desperate attempt to regain stability. But it was no use. A split. Second later, he toppled headfirst into the mud pit, landing with a loud splash that sent droplets flying everywhere. The audience went wild, roaring with laughter and applause. Kimmel sat there in the mud, drenched from head to toe, looking utterly defeated but still grinning ear to ear. He wiped mud off his face and held up a hand, signaling to the crowd that he was okay. "Well," he joked, his voice muffled by the microphone headset now coated in mud, "I guess I'm officially washed up." Stallone, standing tall on the other side of the rope, couldn't help but laugh. He dropped the rope and walked over to the edge of the pit, extending a hand to help Kimmel up. Kimmel grabbed it, and with Stallone's assistance, he climbed out of the mud, leaving behind a trail of soggy footprints. Covered in filth and breathing heavily, Kimmel turned to face the crowd, raising his arms in mock victory. "Don't clap too hard," he said with a chuckle. "I'm pretty sure I broke something, probably my dignity." But despite the loss, Kimmel didn't seem upset. In fact, he looked happier than ever, basking in the adoration of the crowd. People weren't cheering because he won. They were cheering because he tried. And in a world where so many people are afraid to step outside their comfort zones, Kimmel's willingness to embrace the absurdity of the situation resonated deeply with everyone watching. Meanwhile, Stallone stood nearby, watching Kimmel with a mix of admiration and respect. This wasn't the same guy who had mocked him on national television weeks ago. Over the course of the showdown, Kimmel had shown a level of grit and humor that earned Stallone's approval. Sure, he hadn't come close to winning any of the challenges, but he had proven something far more important. He wasn't afraid to take risks, even if it meant making a fool of himself in front of millions of people. With the final challenge complete, the event moved into its closing ceremony. Both men took the stage together, standing side by side as the host announced the results. Unsurprisingly, Stallone was declared the overall winner of The Ultimate Showdown. But instead of gloating, he used the opportunity to praise Kimmel for his effort and sportsmanship. "Jimmy," Stallone said, addressing the crowd and Kimmel directly, "you may have joked about me, but tonight showed me something I didn't expect. You've got guts. Real guts. Not many people would put themselves through what you did tonight, especially knowing they didn't stand a chance. So I want to say thank you. You reminded me why we do what we do, for the love of the game, for the fans, and for the laughs." Kimmel, still dripping with mud, nodded in appreciation. "Sly, let me just say this, you're every bit as tough as your movies make you look. And honestly, that scares me." The audience laughed and Kimmel continued, "But seriously, this whole thing has been incredible. I came here thinking I'd get crushed, and I did, but I also had the time of my life. Thank you for letting me be part of this insanity." Their exchange was genuine, filled with mutual respect and gratitude. It was clear that the rivalry had transformed into something much deeper, a friendship forged through competition. As they shook hands and posed for photos together, the crowd erupted into another round of applause. Fans waved signs, snapped pictures, and shouted words of encouragement, thrilled to witness such a unique and heartwarming moment. Before wrapping up the event, Stallone addressed the audience one last time. "This wasn't just about us," he said, gesturing to Kimmel. "It was about coming together, having fun, and supporting a good cause. Every dollar raised tonight is going to charity, and I can't thank you enough for being here and making this possible." The crowd cheered again, proud to have contributed to something meaningful. The showdown had raised millions of dollars for various charitable organizations, proving that entertainment and philanthropy could go hand in hand. As fireworks lit up the night sky and music blared through the speakers, people lingered in the arena, reluctant to leave. They didn't want the magic of the evening to end. By the time the lights dimmed and the crowd dispersed, it was obvious that The Ultimate Showdown had become more than just a publicity stunt. It was a celebration of resilience, humility, and the power of laughter to bring people together. Stallone and Kimmel had started as rivals, but they ended the night as friends. Two very different personalities who found common ground in the unlikeliest of places. And as the cameras panned out for one final shot of the arena, you couldn't help but smile. Because sometimes the best stories aren't about winners or losers. They're about the moments that remind us of our shared humanity and the joy of embracing life's messy, unpredictable adventures. The aftermath of The Ultimate Showdown was nothing short of extraordinary. What had started as a playful yet tense rivalry between Sylvester Stallone and Jimmy Kimmel transformed into something far greater, a story of respect, humility, and the power of human connection. As the dust settled, literally in Kimmel's case, both men were left reflecting on what they had achieved, not just for themselves, but for everyone who had tuned in to watch. In the days following the event, social media exploded with reactions. Clips from the showdown went viral almost instantly. Fans couldn't get enough of Stallone's sheer dominance in every challenge, his muscles rippling under the lights as he powered through obstacles like a true action hero. Memes flooded timelines, showing Stallone mid-punch or scaling walls with ease, captioned with phrases like, "Still the champ," and "Never bet against Rocky." But it wasn't just Stallone who captured people's attention. Kimmel's performance, while hilariously disastrous, won hearts around the world. Videos of him slipping in the mud, flailing during the tug-of-war, and dramatically collapsing in the boxing ring became internet gold. Comment sections were filled with messages like, "Jimmy gave it his all, and this guy deserves an award for bravery." Even those who hadn't been fans before found themselves rooting for him, impressed by his willingness to embrace the absurdity of the situation. For Stallone, the event reinforced his status as a legend. Interviews poured in from every corner of the media landscape, with journalists eager to hear his thoughts on the showdown. When asked about his decision to take on Kimmel in such a public way, Stallone shrugged modestly. "Look," he said, leaning back in his chair during one interview, "I've spent my whole life proving doubters wrong. When someone challenges me or pokes fun at what I stand for, I don't shy away. But this wasn't about revenge. It was about showing up, having fun, and reminding people that you can laugh at yourself while still taking pride in your work." He paused, then added with a smile, "And honestly, I think Jimmy taught me a lot more than I taught him. Watching him throw himself into these challenges knowing full well he didn't stand a chance, that takes guts. Not many people would do that." Kimmel, meanwhile, handled the aftermath with his trademark humor. On his late-night show, he opened with a monologue dedicated entirely to the showdown. "Well, folks," he began, standing behind his desk wearing a bathrobe instead of his usual suit, "I survived the ultimate showdown. Barely." The audience erupted into laughter as he recounted some of the highlights, or lowlights depending on how you looked at it, from the event. He joked about how his trainer had given up on him halfway through the obstacle course, muttering, "You're beyond help," before walking off. He also shared a clip of himself falling face first into the mud pit, adding, "If this doesn't qualify me for a Darwin Award, I don't know what does." But beneath the jokes, there was a sense of genuine gratitude in Kimmel's tone. "Here's the thing," he admitted later in the segment, growing more serious. "When Sly challenged me to this, I thought it was going to be a disaster. And yeah, it kind of was, but in the best possible way. I learned a lot about myself, about pushing past fear, and about respecting someone who's truly great at what they do. So, Sly, if you're watching this, thanks for not going easy on me. You showed me what real toughness looks like." Their newfound camaraderie didn't stop there. In the weeks that followed, Stallone made a surprise appearance on Kimmel's show, not as a guest but as a co-host for the night. Together they bantered back and forth, poking fun at each other while reminiscing about the showdown. At one point, Kimmel pulled out a framed photo of himself covered in mud, presenting it to Stallone as a thank you gift. Stallone laughed, holding it up for the audience to see. "This is officially my favorite picture of you," he quipped. "I might frame it and put it in my house." The chemistry between them was undeniable, and viewers loved seeing their unlikely friendship play out on screen. It was clear that the showdown had changed things between them, turning what could have been a bitter feud into a bond built on mutual respect and shared experiences. Beyond the entertainment value, the event had a lasting impact on the charities involved. Thanks to ticket sales, donations, and merchandise, millions of dollars were raised for causes ranging from children's hospitals to veterans support programs. Organizations sent heartfelt thank you notes to both Stallone and Kimmel, praising them for using their platforms to make a difference. One charity even named a new playground after Stallone, dubbing it Rocky's Park in honor of his contributions. As time passed, the legacy of The Ultimate Showdown continued to grow. Sports networks aired special retrospectives breaking down each challenge and analyzing Stallone's strategies versus Kimmel's comedic antics. Late-night hosts referenced the event in their own monologues, often joking about how Kimmel should stick to hosting rather than competing. Meanwhile, fans kept the spirit alive online, creating fan art, writing fictional sequels, and speculating about what future showdowns might look like. Even Hollywood took notice. Rumors swirled about a potential movie adaptation of the event, with producers eager to bring the story to the big screen. While nothing official was announced, Stallone hinted in interviews that he wouldn't mind revisiting the concept someday. "Who knows?" he teased during one press conference. "Maybe we'll do a sequel, only next time I won't go so easy on him." Kimmel, ever the Joker, chimed in with his own response. "A sequel? Sure, why not? As long as they let me wear protective padding, and maybe give me a stunt double." What made The Ultimate Showdown so special wasn't just the spectacle of it all. It was the reminder that competition doesn't have to breed animosity, it can foster connection. By stepping outside their comfort zones and embracing the chaos, Stallone and Kimmel showed the world that laughter and respect can coexist, even in the most unlikely circumstances. They proved that sometimes the best rivalries aren't about winning or losing, they're about learning, growing, and finding common ground. And as the final credits rolled on this unforgettable chapter, one thing was certain. Whether it was in the ring, on the screen, or in the hearts of their fans, Sylvester Stallone and Jimmy Kimmel had created something timeless, a story that would be told and retold for years to come. The legacy of The Ultimate Showdown didn't fade with time. It only grew stronger. What started as a playful yet heated rivalry between Sylvester Stallone and Jimmy Kimmel had evolved into something far bigger than either man could have imagined. It wasn't just an event, it became a cultural moment, one that reminded people of the power of laughter, humility, and human connection. Months after the showdown, fans still talked about it. Clips from the event continued to pop up on social media, often accompanied by comments like, "This never gets old," or "I wish they'd do this every year." Memes of Kimmel falling into the mud pit became memes, within memes, endlessly remixed and shared across platforms. One particularly popular GIF showed Stallone helping Kimmel out of the mud, with text overlaid saying, "When life knocks you down, find someone willing to pull you back up." The image resonated deeply, capturing the essence of what made the showdown so special, not the competition itself, but the bond that formed through it. For Stallone, the event reinforced his status as a timeless icon. People admired him not just for his physical strength or cinematic achievements, but for his ability to rise above petty grievances and turn conflict into camaraderie. In interviews, he spoke candidly about how the experience affected him. "You know, when Jimmy first joked about me, I took it personally," he admitted during a sit-down with a morning talk show host. "But then I realized, why not use this as an opportunity? Why not show people that we can laugh together instead of at each other?" He went on to explain that the showdown was more than just a chance to prove himself physically. It was about showing respect for myself, for Jimmy, and for everyone watching. We live in a world where people are quick to tear each other down. I wanted to remind folks that sometimes the best way to respond to negativity is with positivity. Kimmel, too, found himself reflecting on the experience long after the mud had dried. On his late-night show, he occasionally revisited the topic, sharing behind-the-scenes stories and photos from the event. During one episode, he showed a clip of himself struggling to climb over the final wall in the obstacle course, joking, "This is me trying to conquer my fears. Spoiler alert, I failed miserably." But then, growing serious, he added, "Failing isn't the worst thing in the world. Sometimes failing teaches you more than winning ever could. That sentiment struck a chord with viewers. Many wrote in to say how inspired they were by Kimmel's willingness to embrace vulnerability. Seeing him fall flat on his face and still keep going made me realize it's okay to fail. One fan tweeted, "If Jimmy Kimmel can laugh at himself while covered in mud, maybe I can laugh at my own mistakes too." Beyond the personal growth both men experienced, the showdown left a lasting impact on their careers. For Stallone, it reignited interest in his classic films. Streaming services reported spikes in viewership for Rocky and Rambo, while younger audiences discovered his movies for the first time. Merchandise featuring iconic scenes from his films flew off shelves, thanks in part to renewed excitement generated by the event. Fans even started organizing outdoor screenings of Rocky, complete with themed workouts and stair-climbing challenges inspired by the Philadelphia Steps. Kimmel, meanwhile, saw a boost in ratings for his late-night show. Viewers tuned in not just for his sharp wit, but for the genuine warmth he brought to every interview. His dynamic with Stallone became a recurring theme, with guests often asking about the showdown and whether there would be a rematch. Kimmel always responded with his trademark humor, teasing that he'd need at least a decade of training before considering another round. As the months passed, rumors began swirling about a potential sequel to The Ultimate Showdown. While neither Stallone nor Kimmel confirmed anything officially, they teased the idea during joint appearances. During one charity gala, Stallone playfully challenged Kimmel to a rematch, saying, "Next time, no trainers, no prep, just raw talent." Kimmel laughed, replying, "Raw talent, that's rich coming from Rambo." The audience loved it, and speculation ran wild about what new challenges might be included. While a sequel remained uncertain, the spirit of the showdown lived on in other ways. Inspired by the event, local communities began hosting their own versions of The Ultimate Showdown, using it as a way to raise money for charity. From tug-of-war competitions to obstacle races, these grassroots events brought neighbors together, fostering a sense of unity and fun. Some organizers even reached out to Stallone and Kimmel, inviting them to make guest appearances. Though scheduling conflicts prevented them from attending most events, both men sent video messages of encouragement, urging participants to give it their all while remembering to enjoy themselves. Perhaps the most profound impact of the showdown was its reminder of the importance of humility and sportsmanship. In a world often divided by politics, opinions, and egos, Stallone and Kimmel showed that it's possible to disagree without animosity. Their journey from rivals to friends served as a powerful example of how humor and respect can bridge gaps between vastly different personalities. Even years later, the story of The Ultimate Showdown continued to inspire. Documentaries explored its creation, highlighting the hard work and dedication that went into making it happen. Schools used it as a case study in leadership and teamwork, teaching students about the value of perseverance and collaboration. And whenever someone needed a pick-me-up, they could turn to footage of the showdown, a reminder that life is better when we approach it with courage, kindness, and a healthy dose of laughter. In the end, The Ultimate Showdown wasn't just about who won or lost. It was about proving that even the unlikeliest pairings can create magic when they come together with open hearts and minds. Sylvester Stallone and Jimmy Kimmel may have started as opponents, but they ended as allies. Two very different men, united by a shared love of entertainment, humanity, and the joy of rising to a challenge. And as the final chapter of their story closed, one thing was undeniable. Their showdown had left an indelible mark on the world, one that would continue to inspire generations to come.